Okay, so it's Cat Stanley, Space Demon, coming at you again. And you know, one of the great things about being a rock and roll fan is experiencing rock and roll music live. There's nothing like a rock concert to feel and experience your favorite bands. But you know, live rock and roll music is no stranger to tragedy. Occasionally, things do go a bit awry at the rock show, be it the Great White Station nightclub fire in Rhode Island, where 100 patrons perished in the fire at their show in 2003, or the Who stampede at Cincinnati's Riverfront Stadium, where 11 people were killed in 1979. Of course, former Pantera guitarist Dimebag Darrell Abbott was one of 4 people killed at the El Rosa Villa nightclub. Sounds like the name of a retirement community in Florida. El Rosa Villa, Del Boca Vista. You want a piece of me? Apparently, but in Columbus, Ohio, 2004, the El Rosa Villa nightclub was where Dimebag Darrell Abbott, he was one of 4 people shot and killed in a tragic event in 2004. And unfortunately for hard rockers, Kiss, they're no strangers to tragedy. And today we're going to go back to March of 2000. Kiss played a show at the Oakland Alameda Coliseum complex at the Oakland Arena, where a 36-year-old Kiss fan suffered a fatal 90-foot plunge. Apparently, the gentleman, Sean Stubblefield, was a scientist from Calistoga. He fell from a ledge above his top row seat Thursday night while attending the Kiss farewell tour concert. Police did say the death was accidental. The band was in the middle of God of Thunder at 10:45 p.m. when Stubblefield clambered up a concrete ledge on the 3rd level concourse behind his seat. The ledge was meant to be off limits to patrons. Apparently, Stubblefield lost his balance and fell backwards onto the 1st floor, landing near an escalator and a beer vendor's table. According to police and area custodians, now based on the evidence, it was a total accident, said Oakland Police Sergeant Gus Galindo. And it says he fell as the concert was ending and bassist Gene Simmons was being hoisted up on a platform. They did say Stubblefield had a beer that night, but they, at that point, hadn't determined whether or not he was intoxicated. I don't know, the guy was a scientist. Who knows, maybe he was just trying to test out Newton's theory of gravity, but very unfortunate. But here is Paul Stanley, who was being interviewed on a local Detroit radio station about that tragedy.
Paul, what happened to this guy that died at the show in Oakland? Do you guys know much about that?
It's just tragic. From what I understand and what the newspaper reports were, this guy went behind a seat to a better vantage point, and there was a ledge, and from what I understand, he fell over backwards.
Wow.
Fell down 3 stories.
Now I remember like the Who incident in Riverfront. I think they were told, were they told before the show and they didn't play?
Well, they were told before. Yeah, that was a whole different set of circumstances where people were trampled outside the front doors because there was a huge crowd and they pressed against the glass doors and
did they play that night, or I don't even remember?
I don't remember either.
I mean, how did you guys find out? Was it after the show?
We found out after the show because it happened during the show.
Wow. Yeah. Boy, I came back and told you.
So there you have Paul reiterating the fact that this was just a tragic accident. But another thing I discovered was this show review of that show in Oakland in March of 2000 in SF Gate by a woman by the name of Neva Shonin. It's actually a pretty funny, she pulls no punches. This is a pretty scathing article of Kiss, and it's actually pretty funny, man. I mean, I saw Kiss on that farewell tour, and I thought it was a pretty good show. But, you know, if you'd asked me at the time, I probably would have told you Kiss could do no wrong anyways. I thought it was a great show. It was my first time seeing Kiss, so, you know, Peter Criss could have come out and farted on a snare drum, and I would have been happy. But here's what she had to say. She says, she starts off her article, quoting Kiss guitarist Paul Stanley. She says, "Tonight will be a night to remember. Kiss singer-guitarist Paul Stanley announced at the outset of his band's concert at the arena in Oakland on Thursday night. Okay, so the show wasn't at the actual Oakland Coliseum itself. It was at the arena, which is part of the Oakland Coliseum Sports Complex. Incidentally enough, the Oakland Coliseum, back in 1973, Oakland A's third baseman Sal Bando gave the Coliseum the nickname the Oakland Mausoleum, which I kind of thought was funny in relation to this story. But she says, Paul Stanley says tonight will be a night to remember. If only he had known. By yesterday morning, Kiss of Death headlines were peppering the net after a fan fell to his death midway through the show. Now here they're saying it's midway through the show. The other article said it was at the end of the show. It says there was real ironic sorrow to the incident. Ruthless headline puns aside, the theatrical pop metal netherworld created by Simmons, Stanley, lead guitarist Ace Frehley, and drummer Peter Criss offered a refuge for lonely kids, but it earned scorn from most music critics. In Oakland, Kiss did little to change that opinion. The band turned in a performance so rote and lackluster, it transformed what might have been a celebratory bon voyage into a 2-hour, 10-minute eulogy. After opening with Detroit Rock City and Deuce, the group plowed through 27 years of material, from early fan favorites such as Cold Gin, Black Diamond, and an encore of Rock and Roll All Night, to the title track of its dismal last album, Psycho Circus. And then she goes on to say, to be fair, like all cheese, the songs have grown more palatable over time. What once seemed trite and derivative now sounds like pure pop, driven by a hooky, heavy metal sensibility, spawned by blues, glam rock, and the MC5. If their music has aged well, the band hasn't. Frehley looked weary behind his silver space face as he stepped up to sing Shock Me and 2000 Man. He all but sleepwalked through a lengthy guitar solo, after which his smoking guitar flew up to the rafters. By the end of the night, he couldn't even be bothered to join his bandmates in their choreographed head bobbing. Criss hammered his drums with a workman's dedication, but little spark. Simmons' famous tongue lolling was more evocative of an overheated dog than a demon in heat. It's a pretty funny interview. I gotta be honest with you, I think a lot of fans might even agree with what she's saying. Simmons and Stanley have been very critical of the band during that period. Of course, Ace and Peter during that farewell tour. Gene Simmons, in his autobiography, Kiss and Makeup, said that tour, he just said musically it was the worst the band had ever been. And so she's basically reiterating. Like I said, I saw him during that time. I had a blast. But she doesn't seem to agree. And then she actually lauds Paul Stanley. She says, Stanley offered an occasional respite from the drudgery. The one-time love muffin shook his meaty buttocks at the crowd and strutted like a chubby rooster. He punctuated his rehearsed stage chatter and rants against rock critics with unintentionally hilarious metalhead caterwauling. So she's lauding Paul Stanley for being unintentionally hilarious. So this is a pretty funny review. I mean, even as a Kiss fan, I gotta be honest, it's pretty damn funny. And then she quotes Stanley, one of his spontaneous lines during the show. He says, "The first time we came to San Francisco and Oakland, we thought nobody was gonna like us because everyone was listening to the Grateful Dead," and forced Simmons to confess that he liked Phil Lesh. "Are you effing nuts tonight?" Simmons retorted before stomping back to his side of the enormous stage. Now that's interesting, because it's rare for Gene Simmons to get on the mic and talk between songs, but maybe he was just fed up. I mean, it sounds like he might have been a bit frustrated with Paul's between song bullshit. But the reviewer goes on to say, the rest of the show was strictly play by the numbers. Fireworks, high kicks, and orthopedic platform boots, yada yada yada. So this woman, Neva Shonen, the gist of her review was like, okay, not only was there a fan plunging to his death in the audience, but the 4 band members on stage were dying as well. And at the end, she wraps it up by saying, Kiss gave its fans everything they expected, and for all the carping by music critics, that was what really mattered to the kids and former kids who have helped this band sell a reported 90 million records. Then she goes on to take a few shots at opening act Ted Nugent. And at the end, she says, like Kiss, he's probably history and none too soon. But that's the review of the Kiss farewell show at the Oakland Arena in March of 2000, the night that a Kiss fan tragically plunged to his death. So that's the video. As always, love to hear your comments with regards to the topic hitherto discussed. And we'll see you next time.
Who's here?